Welcome back. Well, as you can see here in the front of us, we have a variety of heart samples, and we have an interventional cardiologist with us from Hoag, who is George Castellanos, Dr. George Castellanos, and he's going to talk to us about the heart, obviously, with all of these wonderful displays here. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your title, an interventional cardiologist. What does that mean?
So first of all, thank you for having me here, Lisa. I appreciate it. So an interventional cardiologist is a cardiologist who specializes in using equipment to fix different problems inside of the heart.
Okay.
So for example, if you were to have a heart attack, I'm the doctor who would go in and place a stent in order to relieve the pain and the chest pressure,
okay,
and allow blood flow to the arteries.
Okay.
Within interventional cardiology, there's a new subdivision, like a subspecialty that's been created called structural heart disease.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times people will refer to me as a structuralist,
okay,
because, and this is some of the stuff that I brought to you, is I can do a lot of procedures that used to be done with open heart surgery without having to open up your chest. I go through arteries or veins in order to get to the places I need to be, allowing for a much faster recovery for patients, as well as lower complication rates.
Okay, now, so you did talk about a little bit about what you used to do. So let's go a little bit more in depth of open heart surgery. So that's what they used to do. And so how far back did we start using these types of procedures?
Okay, so open heart surgery has been around for roughly about 50 to 70 years. And it's the technology for open heart surgery has changed a lot, not so much over the last 20 years or so. A lot of the techniques that are being used now are very similar to what they used before. What's really changed is the fact that we've realized we've tried to do procedures less invasively, like I said, for faster recovery, less complication rates. And here I have 4 different types of procedures that I wanted to outline today.
Okay.
But for the most part, there's about 15 different types of procedures that are available out there.
Okay.
In general, these procedures have been out for about 15 years. And part of the reason why we weren't able to do this 20, 30 years ago was because we didn't have the engineering know-how to be able to develop them.
Right. And
also we didn't have the metals. There's a lot of alloys that we use now that were actually created by the aerospace department that have these wonderful properties that are thin, strong, are rigid, are flexible at the same time, depend on different temperatures. So over the last 15 years, it's just this area of structural heart disease has just been booming.
Right. Now, how did they actually, I mean, if they have a metal like that, how did they test it, especially when you're putting it inside the body with all the fluids, and how did they test that? Well,
there's a few things in that regard. So you're testing to make sure that your body doesn't react negatively to it, right? So you use a lot of animal models.
Okay.
You'll implant the metal in maybe in pigs or in sheep and see how it reacts.
Okay.
Some of these metals have actually also been used in open surgical cases.
Okay.
Again, in patients, the metals are inert. Patients don't react negatively to it.
Okay.
The other aspect that you have to do as well is test how durable these processes, these different equipment will be.
Right.
Any sort of complications. So for that, there are these rigorous trials that we've been a part of that have helped test that. And actually Hoag has been fortunate enough to be part of some of those trials to test how durable is the device that we're implanting in patients to make sure that it's right for the community.
Oh, well, that's good to know, because why would you go anywhere else if you're the ones that are actually testing it?
Yeah,
so excellent,
yes,
excellent.
Yes.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of these treatments, and we'll start with the one that's closest to you. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. So the one here, this is part of a group of procedures called TAVR. It stands for transcatheter aortic valve replacement. So traditionally, the way this procedure of valve replacement used to be done was with an open sternotomy. So that you would actually cut the chest, big scar, open up the chest, replace the valve.
Okay.
In those kind of situations, for the most part, patients are in the hospital for about 5 to 7 days, take 2 to 4 months to recover afterwards. There's complications with its stroke and death and so forth, but this is something that needed to be done, right?
Right.
These devices, this one right here, allows us to be able to do the same without having to open up the chest. We can actually go through an artery, whether it's from the left shoulder or more commonly from the leg, called the common femoral artery.
Okay.
And we go up into the heart and we replace it. It takes about 45 minutes to do. you spend a night in the hospital. For the most part, you go home the next day. The rates of stroke and death from this procedure are even lower than open heart surgery.
Wow.
And you're able to very quickly recover. Within about a month, within about a week, you're back to your normal self and able to do your everyday activities.
Wow, so I mean, how is it that you get this in the body? It looks rather large.
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you, right, these materials are made such that they're very flexible. So I'll give you this one, for example. You can actually squeeze this material.
Oh, okay.
And it can form it into a tube cylinder that's about the size of a pencil.
Okay.
So this one actually is called a Medtronic core valve. And an interesting aspect about this metal is that it's made out of a combination of nitinol and titanium.
Oh.
Under cold circumstances, it's very malleable.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll put it in an ice bath and we can shape it down and make it nice and long, put it inside a tube, insert it into the body. And as we're unsheathing it, as we're removing it, and it starts to heat up by the body's temperature, it becomes this shape and gets very rigid.
Huh.
But that's true with all of these different materials.
Right. Now, what is, once this is inside, what is it doing?
So what it ends up happening is that you can see here the way that it's positioned in the heart. What it'll do is there's actually a valve inside in here that will open and close. What it's allowing to do is direct flow from the heart to the rest of the body.
Oh, okay.
To make sure that it's flowing at the right rate and that it's not leaking back into the wrong chambers.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And then, so this goes with this one, right?
This goes with this one.
Okay, so you can see how that is. And then what is the last one? I'll bring this
Okay.
closer to you.
Yes. So this here is called the mitral clip. And it's this little device right here. It's this white device.
There we go.
Basically what it's intended to do is in people who have a mitral valve, which is this valve here that's leaking, what we can actually do is we can fix that leaking, again, without having to open up the chest. These patients spend the night in the hospital, go home the next day.
Okay.
It's a much safer than open heart surgery.
Right.
The complication rates are also a lot lower. And this one we do it from afar. I mean, we have to get into a vein in the leg, and we're using catheters and wires to be able to do it.
Right. Well, this is, let's have you hold this because that is really cool to be able to see this.
Yeah, so this is the device here, and you can see how I'm able to manipulate it. Imagine this tubing being much longer.
Yeah.
That allows me to be able to manipulate it from outside the body.
Okay.
So then I can make sure that it's in the right spot, and then once it's in the right spot,
And then look at that.
you can clip it, you release it, and it ends up helping. And the main benefit of doing all this is that with the mitral clip specifically, it helps people who are having symptoms of heart failure, so shortness of breath, swelling in the legs, lightheadedness. It actually helps them feel much better.
Oh, yeah.
Now, for any of these therapies, you have to make sure you're appropriate candidate. So it's always important to be able to talk to your doctor about it to make sure that is the right thing for you. But it's an amazing option for patients.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now I'm assuming that once you've had this done, there is some sort of a therapy that you would get, kind of like, do you do some sort of pulmonary, not pulmonary, but you do cardio?
Yeah.
Tell me what it's called.
No, for sure. So it's like cardiac rehab afterwards.
Okay.
But there is, and this is what we always tell patients, is that the actual open heart surgery, it's not too difficult to do per se, right? From a patient's perspective, you don't even know if you're having it done. You're asleep, right?
Right.
These procedures as well, they're actually done while the TAVRs can be done while they're awake. The mitral clips, they're usually asleep. But again, the onus is on me to do the procedure, right? You're the patient, and you don't realize it's happening until you wake up, right? The difficult for other patient is afterwards. It's the recovery, right? So with these type of procedures, a lot of patients will want to be part of cardiac rehab, which is where you go and you have a personal trainer who's kind of telling you how much exercise you can do. But I'll be honest with you, for the most part, you really don't need that.
Okay.
They're so minimally invasive that as long as you just follow some very basic rules, you can be out and about doing your everyday activities by the next day.
Wow.
And within a week, you're able to do everything you used to do before.
That's great.
And again, and the reason why that is such a big difference is because if you contrast that to open heart surgery, there you had to be a lot more careful. If you did certain activity, your chest could open up again, the suture lines could be disrupted, right? So it's a very different paradigm of fixing the same problem, but through a very different lens and different perspective with a very different skill set.
Right. And then also, the recovery is where the insertion was made too, right? I mean that, and then is there any pain that they would feel internally because you've had to go through, or
right? No? Well, so there's actually no nerve sensors inside the arteries or the heart, so you don't feel any pain in that sense. You do feel a little bit of pressure over the area of where we're making the puncture site, because you're having to go through skin, but we numb that up pretty well.
Okay.
But for the most part, patients have minimal complaints with it. One other device that I wanted to actually touch briefly is this one here. It's called the Watchman. So this is called, this is for a left atrial appendage occlusion device. So in people who have a condition known as atrial fibrillation, you're supposed to be taking a blood thinner, right? Now, if something happens and your doctors don't feel that you're a good candidate for that blood thinner, this is a device that can be used in lieu of it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Again, made out of nitinol, very soft.
It's so soft.
It's big, but we actually elongated, kind of like this other valve that I talked about, that one over there. Elongated, put in through a catheter, and it deployed in the heart.
Wow.
Again, specific situations where this is appropriate. Surgeons can open up your chest and do this from outside, but again, it's about a 3-day recovery. You can have complications from it. This, you do it in 45 minutes, you're out the next day, and within a week, you're back to your normal self.
Well, this is comforting to know that you have so many options that are tailored to whatever the patient needs.
And one thing that I wanted to stress that we've noticed as over the last few years is that a lot of patients aren't aware they're candidates for this. A lot of patients, I think, aren't informed that maybe this could be an option for you. And one of the main reasons why I really wanted to be able to chat with you about this is because I think patients need to be more proactive with their care and realize that the options are not being provided to them at times.
Okay.
And my perspective is that as a patient, you need to be informed. What are the things that you can have done, right?
Right.
Because there's a huge underutilization of these therapies out in the community. So we need to do, as physicians and as community members, really community leaders, we need to do a better job of telling our patients, look, these are your options, and you can choose one or the other, that's fine, but at least be informed of what's available so that we're not underutilizing the therapies.
Or technology.
Yeah,
I mean, the
for
technology is amazing today, so nice. Thank you for sharing those with us. Now, earlier you were saying that Hoag is part of the actual process of testing. So why is it that an experienced team really matters when we're looking for doctors?
Sure. So just to give you a little bit of a perspective, in California, there's maybe about 10 hospitals, maybe 10, that do all of these 3 procedures, all of California. And over time, yes, we'll have more and more, but right now, not that many. Why? It's because these are very specialized procedures where complications can arise. They're not very common, but they can, and you need to know how to manage them. So you need to have a team that A, is able to identify the patient appropriately, B, is able to do the procedure well, and then C, is able to take care of the patient afterwards, right? Well, in order to be able to be really good at that, you need to have volume. You need to see these patients. As we talked about, oftentimes these therapies are underutilized. So if you all start having, you need to have a strong team that has experience. We do about 150 to 200 of these therapies a year, which is a lot, actually. And the more you do, the better you get at it, and we have excellent outcomes. Our mortality rates, our stroke rates, all of those are half of what they are of the national average.
Right.
So it's extremely important that you get someone who knows what they're doing as a whole.
Right.
From the beginning to end, who's taking care of you. Absolutely.
Right. And there was one thing that you said to us beforehand. If you want to prevent possibly needing any of this, what is the one thing that we should all be doing?
Yeah, exercise.
Exercise.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you're sitting on the couch and you just don't want to go to the gym, just think about what we've been talking about here. Not that we want to put you out of business or anything. But anyway, well, thank you so much. And then if anybody wants information about Hoag, they can always go to your website, which is hoag.org, or they could call at 949-764-5871.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you. I appreciate it.
It was good meeting you as well.
All right. And remember, exercise is your friend. All right, we'll be right back after this.